Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Just want to first acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations here on beautiful Bowen Island, or Khelsilem. And I'm very pleased to be joined today with some very esteemed guests to make a very, very important announcement, including the Right Honourable Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the Minister of Transport, Omar Alghabra, the Honourable Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard, Joyce Murray, and Squamish Nation Councillor Khelsilem. But before going any further, I would like to turn it over to Khelsilem to welcome us in the right way today.
Hello, everybody. My name is Khelsilem. I'm the elected chairperson for the Squamish Nation, and also known as the Squamish Nation. And I just want to issue a few words of welcome to this territory on this island, in our language we call Khelsilem. This has been a place for many generations that we have harvested and lived and practiced our culture. Continues on today with the medicines that we harvest from the areas around Bowen Island. But also the ancient history that ties us to this land, the stories, the teachings that our elders passed down to us from one generation to the other. And so I just want to say Tanoyap Ansequetal, Tanoyap Siam, Anslekons Quanman, Tanoyap, Eoch Swat 80, Nils Ol Tameoch to Squamish Ost Almoch. Chit Quanman, Eoch Swat, Wa Quis Hame 8 seats. Just wanted to issue words of welcome in our language here to the territory of the Squamish people. I want to thank my esteemed leaders who are here today to share a few words and exciting announcements. So on behalf of the Squamish Nation, I just really thank each and every one of you for having the time in your heart to acknowledge and pay respect to the territory here of my ancestors, and just raising my hands in gratitude to each and every one of you. Osiam.
Thank you, Khelsilem, for the starting us in the right way today. One thing that binds all British Columbians together is a love and appreciation for the coastal environments that we live in. The opportunities we have to recreate, the opportunities to feed ourselves from the food, and just the wonder of the marine environment. And nowhere is that more true than the place that we're gathered here today on House Sound Khelsilem, which just recently last year was recognized by UNESCO as a biosphere reserve for the incredible bounty that we see here around us today. But while we appreciate the marine environment and everything that lives within it, we know that there are many ways where it has been stressed by human development and climate change. And that's why we've made a commitment to do what we can to make our impact on the environment lesser through ways of doing shipping safer, ways of ensuring that we protect and understand the marine environment, doing research, and doing what we can so that marine mammals and wild salmon, amongst others, are going to be able to restore to traditional levels of abundance. So that's why I'm very happy today that we're here with Ministers Alghabra and Minister Joyce Murray to talk about the work that they're doing and that we're going to continue to do on this front. But it's also important that we're gathered here today on Bowen Island, where the municipality itself has done some incredible work to ensure that this bay that's just behind us right here is going to be free from problem ships that are docked here through the work that they've done on license of occupation. But all of the work that's being done has to be done in partnership with Indigenous peoples, and so I'm very grateful that Councillor Khelsilem is here today. But before I go any further, I would like to turn it over to our very special guest here today, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, to give this fantastic announcement.
Thank you, Patrick. Merci, Patrick. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis très heureux d'être ici en compagnie des ministres Alghabra et Murray. I want to start by acknowledging that we are on the traditional Coast Salish territory of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Thank you, Khelsilem, for your welcome, for your words, for your acknowledgement of the work that we all must do to preserve and be good stewards of this extraordinary land. I want to begin by taking a moment to address the wildfires burning right now across the country. Everyone in the Mathias-Colomb Cree Nation in Manitoba has now been evacuated and accounted for. I want to thank Chief Lorna Bigotty for her tremendous leadership throughout the evacuation. And of course, RCMP and firefighters remain engaged on the scene. And of course, I know people here in Lytton, BC are once again facing hardships as the Nahomin Creek wildfire continues to burn in the area. We all hope that everyone remains safe and listens to the authorities. And I want to thank the firefighters and first responders across the country who are always there to step up and keep us all safe. It is so fantastic today to be here on Bowen Island. Growing up, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents just across the way in West Van, looking out over Howe Sound. And my great-grandmother actually lived on the other side near Gibson's, where we'd go and visit. And being here today in Bowen roots me both in the past but also in the future that we need to build all together. So I want to thank the Mayor for welcoming us here today. Thank you, Gary. Canada has some of the most beautiful places in the world, and where we are today is a perfect example of that, with mountains, ocean, fresh air, whales, fish, birds, and all kinds of wildlife. In fact, as Patrick mentioned, the Salish Sea, right behind me, is one of the most richly biodiverse places on Earth. And I don't have to tell anyone here why it matters that we protect these spaces. Of course, not all governments have always felt the same. Under the previous government, promises to protect our oceans went unfulfilled again and again, with Coast Guard centres closed, with environmental protections slashed, with legislation gutted, and scientists muzzled. So 7 years ago, when our government took office, we knew we had to do something big that was ambitious and that makes sure that Canada is doing everything necessary to protect our waters. So in 2016, we launched the Oceans Protection Plan to protect animals and ecosystems, to make marine shipping safer, to work in partnership with Indigenous peoples and coastal communities. To take just two examples here in BC, we reopened the Kitts Coast Guard Station in Vancouver that the previous government had closed. We protected species like the southern resident killer whales, along with 300 other measures across the country. We've done a lot since 2016. Marine species are better protected, shipping is safer, and we've built strong relationships with Indigenous and coastal communities. But now, it's time to be even more ambitious. Today, we are launching the Oceans Protection Plan 2.0, with another $2 billion in funding to back it up as we renew and expand this work across the country, including continuing our work in the Great Lakes and on the St. Lawrence. We'll take action to combat emerging threats to our marine safety and ecosystems, and we'll strengthen partnerships with Indigenous peoples who must be our partners and in many ways our leaders as we move forward on protecting these extraordinary ecosystems. A good example is the work that we're doing right here together on the Salish Sea strategy. We'll continue to protect and restore this rich ecosystem in a way that respects Indigenous and treaty rights and traditional knowledge. And we'll deploy technologies that reduce the impacts of underwater noise so that marine mammals can safely communicate with each other and navigate through these waters. Aujourd'hui, on lance le plan de protection des océans 2.0. Avec un financement supplémentaire de 2 milliards de dollars pour poursuivre et étendre notre travail à l'échelle du pays, incluant dans les Grands Lacs et le Saint-Laurent. On va prendre des mesures pour lutter contre les nouvelles menaces à notre sécurité et à nos écosystèmes maritimes, et on va renforcer les partenariats avec les peuples autochtones. On est très chanceux d'avoir autant de nature et de beauté dans notre pays, mais on a donc la responsabilité de s'en occuper. The Oceans Protection Plan 2.0 is about moving forward with new, bold action with partners from coast to coast to coast to protect and restore our oceans. We can't help but feel hopeful when we hear stories like the new baby orca born to one of the southern killer whale families for the first time in over a decade. You can also see it when you look around Howe Sound. 50 years ago, this was one of the most polluted places in North America, teetering on the brink of ecological disaster. Today, it's teeming with life once again. When we work together, we can revitalize our environment so that it's safe and healthy for us all for years and decades to come. Merci beaucoup. Je passe maintenant la parole à mon ami le ministre Alghabra. Omar, over to you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Good morning, everyone. It's also a great pleasure for me to be with my colleagues here and all of you. I'm happy to be here in Bowen Island for this incredibly important announcement. As the Prime Minister said, when we launched the Oceans Protection Plan in 2016, the Prime Minister spoke about the importance of protecting our coasts for Indigenous and marine communities, for the economy, and for the health of our environment. Nos côtes sont importantes pour la communauté autochtone et marine, pour notre économie et pour notre environnement. Since then, we've done just that. After 10 years of inaction under the previous government, our government turned the page with the largest investment Canada has ever seen to protect our waters. Through the Oceans Protection Plan, we've made our coastlines safer by opening 2 new Coast Guard search and rescue stations right here in British Columbia and reopened 4 others across Canada. We've gotten tougher on polluters and forced them to compensate communities for oil spilled in our waters and introduced legislation that makes it illegal to abandon boats in Canada. In fact, we've removed or assessed over 500 abandoned boats that were a hazard to safe navigation in our waters. We've ensured the recovery of 223 endangered species and 60 local ecosystems across Canada, including 14 here in British Columbia. We've significantly benefited from the traditional knowledge of our Indigenous partners. Through the reconciliation framework agreements, we are working alongside 17 First Nations on marine initiatives in BC's North Coast. This is just one example of how our government and Indigenous peoples are working together and advancing reconciliation through the Oceans Protection Plan. And through our marine training program, I'm happy to say that we're making our marine workforce more diverse and inclusive to better represent the communities the students will go on to serve. Nous faisons en sorte que notre personnel maritime soit plus diversifié et plus ouvert. That program has resulted in 750 graduates, including women, Northerners, and Indigenous peoples from schools here in British Columbia, Nunavut, and Nova Scotia. 13 First Nations communities are leading the Enhanced Maritime Situational Awareness Program, improving our understanding of local waters. 18 infrastructure projects in Northern Canada are improving marine safety and resupply operations there. We've banned tankers on the North Coast and changed legislation to better compensate first responders and victims of oil spills. In all, we've launched over 50 initiatives, which has made shipping safer, better protected our coastal ecosystems, and strengthened our ability to respond to marine emergencies. And while this work has continued throughout the pandemic, the world has changed in the last 2 years. The pandemic, climate change, innovations in the marine industry, and supply chain challenges are affecting the marine environment. So that's why, as Prime Minister just said, we're not only announcing another 9 years of the Oceans Protection Plan, but expanding it to cover new areas. The Oceans Protection Plan will be enhanced to make large and small ship traffic safer on our waters, keep supply chains healthy, strong, and resilient, increase our emergency preparedness, response, recovery, and research into marine pollution beyond oil spills, and introduce even stronger protection for ecosystems and wildlife, including our endangered whale population. When Indigenous peoples, industry, communities, academia, and government work together, we can support the economy and protect the environment. Today's announcement shows how we're doing just that. And as we look toward this next phase, I'm excited to build on the progress of the Oceans Protection Plan. Our strength together will allow us to keep protecting Canada's ocean for generations to come. Thank you, merci. And now I'll ask my colleague and friend, Minister Murray, to come to the podium.
Bonjour tout le monde. It's wonderful to be here with the Prime Minister, Minister Alghabra, MP Patrick Weiler, and Councillor Khelsilem on the traditional Coast Salish territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And wow, what a treat to be here on Bowen Island. So, grâce aux océans, nous avons d'abondants emplois, de la nourriture, de l'énergie, nous faisons du commerce, nous jouissons des loisirs et comme pour de nombreux Canadiens, les océans représentent notre identité culturelle. Notre gouvernement est fermement résolu à les protéger et à les préserver pour les générations futures. For the Canadian Coast Guard, funding from the Oceans Protection Plan will help strengthen our marine safety systems, meaning they'll be stronger positioned to prevent and respond to marine safety and environmental accidents. The Coast Guard will also expand our Indigenous community boat volunteer program, so communities are trained and well equipped to respond to marine incidents in their traditional waters. Thanks to this new funding, the Canadian Coast Guard will also acquire a search and rescue vessel specifically designed for the Arctic Ocean's harsh conditions. Des investissements supplémentaires seront réalisés en vue d'acquérir de l'équipement d'intervention environnementale, d'offrir de la formation en matière de sécurité maritime, de remédier aux problèmes des navires préoccupants et afin d'accroître la capacité de la garde côtière auxiliaire canadienne. As we talk about future investments in the Canadian Coast Guard, I'd also like to reflect on what we have already accomplished. In 2016, our government reopened the very important Khelsilem Coast Guard station after it was closed by the previous Conservative government. And it is now, once again, the busiest station in all Canadian waters and played a key and critical role in responding to the Zim Kingston incident last fall. Finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Canadian Coast Guard is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year, so I do want to thank all Coast Guard members on all three coasts, including those who brought us here to Bowen Island, for their service to Canadians and to our marine environment. Le plan de protection des océans est la bonne voie à suivre pour assurer la sécurité des océans du Canada pour les générations à venir. And the Ocean Protection Plan will continue to ensure the protection of Canadians' oceans for the generations to come. Thank you. Merci.
Nous avons maintenant le temps pour des questions des médias. We now have time for questions from media. It will be one question, one follow-up. Please identify your name and outlet. And we will start with the first reporter. On va commencer avec la première journaliste.
Hi there, it's Amy Smart at the Canadian Press. Health systems across the country are closing their emergency rooms because things have gotten so bad. Doctors are calling it unprecedented. It's happening coast to coast. You said you need certain assurances from the provinces that you'll get tangible results, but meanwhile, real people are facing serious delays in accessing urgent care. What concrete moves can we expect to see next from the federal government, and when can we expect to see them?
We just announced $2 billion to flow to the provinces to help with the backlogs because we understand the pressures that are there now. Too many Canadians across the country are waiting for surgeries that have still been put off, are still struggling to find a family doctor, are facing longer waits and even shut down emergency rooms. This is not okay. And just like the federal government did during the pandemic, in stepping up with over $70 billion in extra additional funding for healthcare across the country to help people through the pandemic, we're going to continue to be there to invest in a stronger health system for all Canadians. But I think all Canadians know that we need real improvements and real results from our healthcare system. The pandemic exposed some of the challenges and the issues faced by our frontline healthcare workers who are heroes but who are getting more and more strained and not seeing the backup and the support that they need, or the new entrance into their line of work. We need to solve these, and we need to solve them together. So yes, the federal government is there as a partner, is going to invest more, but we have to learn from the past and make sure that as we step up with more funds, it actually helps Canadians get a family doctor, get access to mental health services, support them through the challenges they're facing as we come out of COVID. These are the things that Canadians are expecting, and the federal government is going to be there to make sure, alongside the provinces, that that happens.
Follow-up?
Yes, the turbines for Gazprom's pipeline are heading back to Germany. A story out today suggests Gazprom is telling European buyers, including in Germany, that it cannot guarantee gas supplies, even with the turbines. At what point does Canada rescind the waiver to allow the turbines to return? And what exactly can Canada do once they've arrived at their destination?
Let's be very clear about what's going on here. Russia is choosing to weaponize energy policy as a way of continuing with its assault on Ukraine, but also as a way of dividing Western allies amongst ourselves, as well as undermine public support for our strong stance in favor of Ukraine and against Russia. Canada is absolutely unequivocal that we continue to stand with Ukraine and push back on Russia's illegal and unacceptable actions. We need to do that in a way that keeps all of us together and continues to have public support for the incredible efforts that all of us, including countries like Germany and other European countries, are doing in direct support for Ukraine, with military, with financial supports, with humanitarian supports. So Russia will not succeed in either weaponizing its energy or dividing our allies amongst ourselves. We are focused on being there to support Ukraine. This decision was a difficult one, but it was the right one to ensure that we continue to all stand together against Putin's illegal war in support of Ukraine.
We'll take the next question.
Hello, sir. Corey Callahan with Global News. Similar question. Just going to read an email from a colleague back east. With reports that Gazprom declared a force majeure and it's threatening it can't guarantee gas supplies to customers in Europe, what was the benefit of breaking your government's own sanctions and allowing the turbines to be shipped to Germany, given that it's not guaranteeing gas flow?
Again, we know that Russia is choosing to use energy as a tool to divide the West, to undermine public support for Ukraine, and to continue to advance its military goals in its illegal invasion of Ukraine. And what allies are demonstrating right now is that we're not only standing unequivocally with Ukraine right now and against Russia, but we are prepared to do so for months and indeed years to come. And Russia's attempt to undermine public support for the war in Ukraine will continue. They're using gas and gas policy as a way of trying to divide and undermine public support. And what we have demonstrated is we will not allow that to happen. We will continue to stand unequivocally with Ukraine, and we will remain united and focused on delivering that support that Ukraine needs.
Next question over at the mic on the right.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Thank you for taking our questions. I'd like to start by asking you what you would say is, for the Oceans Protection Plan, the part of it so far that you're proudest of, and what area would you like to see some more work done in?
Well, I think one of the things that was absolutely essential was moving back into the space of saying that our oceans need to be protected. It seems so obvious, particularly standing here all together, but the federal government, prior to us, was shuttering Coast Guard stations, was underinvesting, was ignoring any sorts of partnerships with Indigenous peoples, and firing scientists. So it was a huge thing that we stepped forward 5-6 years ago with an unprecedented oceans protections plan, along with well over billions of dollars to be able to actually deliver. And over the past 5 years, we've done a tremendous amount in building and deepening relationships with Indigenous partners who have been stewards of these oceans and these coastal areas for millennia, investing to counter the impact of increased marine traffic and protect vulnerable species at risk, and building on the tremendous actions, results, and success of those past 5 years. We're now doubling down with 9 more years of an oceans protection plan that's going to be expanded and deepened, strengthen even further the partnerships with Indigenous communities and partners, move forward on even stronger science and research, even better protection for vulnerable species and vulnerable areas, and demonstrate that the only way to build a bright future and create jobs is to make sure we're doing it in ways that protect these extraordinary places.
Follow-up?
All right, and then on the community news side, have you ever been to Bowen Island before, and what will you be checking out while you're here?
I have spent a lot of time in this area, but I've never actually set foot on Bowen Island. I've kayaked along the whole coast going up the Sound, and I've always looked forward to coming here. And right now, I'm just really looking forward to meeting as many people as possible and enjoying some of the fabulous and famous Bowen Island hospitality.
All right, thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Mr. Prime Minister, Murray, the camera guy from CBC, and if you could answer this in both English and French, I would really appreciate it. We're learning that Hockey Canada had a special fund for uninsured liabilities, including sexual lawsuits and sexual assault cases. Mr. Trudeau, do you still have trust in the people at the head of Hockey Canada?
I think right now it's hard for anyone in Canada to have faith or trust in anyone at Hockey Canada. What we're learning today is absolutely unacceptable. It's why a number of days ago or weeks ago we froze funding to Hockey Canada, pending significant reforms and transparency and accountability. I mean, a few years ago I had my son in hockey, and when I think about the culture that is apparently permeating the highest orders of that organization, I can understand why so many parents, why so many Canadians who take such pride in our national winter sport are absolutely disgusted by what's going on. And certainly as a government, we will continue to be unequivocal in our condemnation of what we're learning, and mostly in our demands that things change significantly. Ce qu'on est en train d'apprendre par rapport à Hockey Canada est absolument inacceptable. Je pense que énormément de personnes ont perdu confiance dans cette organisation. Quand je pense en tant que parent qui, il y a une couple d'années, avait mon fils dans un programme de hockey, je suis vraiment perturbé pour la culture qui apparemment s'est immiscée dans les plus hauts niveaux de cette organisation. C'est pour ça, en tant que gouvernement, on a gelé les fonds qu'on envoyait vers Hockey Canada en attendant des redditions de comptes et des transformations de l'organisation. Je pense que c'est essentiel qu'on voit vraiment une nouvelle approche et un compte rendu et des conséquences pour les gens qui sont responsables de ce manque de respect profond en tant qu'institution.
Merci, thank you.
Thank you. If that's it for questions, that will conclude today's press conference.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you all very much.
I think those people behind you were watching you on television.